Hey guys, John here with the Blockade Runner Podcast, and tonight we are playing Super Star Wars for the Super Nintendo, and we're doing this as part of our Power of the 90s series for 1992. We are covering the games, books, movies, toys, comics, everything Star Wars that came out each year of the 90s. So it's been a ton of fun, but I'm super excited to play through some Super Star Wars here. I think for a ton of us, especially in the 90s, the Super Star Wars games for Super NES were just the best. They were so cool and so much fun. These games were developed by Sculptured Software out of Salt Lake City, who had previously done some other Star Wars games. They'd done The Empire Strikes Back on the NES and would go on to do a few other Star Wars games. So, but this is, I feel like, as far as Star Wars games go, this one is a major achievement, accomplishment, this whole series. And so, this is just one that everybody loved so much. I think at the time, we're seeing, more like we're hearing right now, the really cool Super Nintendo interpretation of Star Wars music, which I think is very 90s, feels very 90s, and is just a really cool aesthetic for, these classic John Williams tunes. And soon we're going to see kind of the 16-bit interpretation of Star Wars characters and worlds and action and stuff like that, which, if you're like me, that whole era of video games and Star Wars actually, but that whole era of video games, 16-bit, is just a really memorable and I think really cool looking visually time in video games, and to take Star Wars and filter it through that 16-bit look is really cool. And there's our namesake, the Blockade Runner there. Love seeing that in 16-bit glory. And we can see this opening is following the movie pretty closely. And we're starting out here on the Dune Sea. So yeah, I'm playing as Luke Skywalker. We've got the blaster here. And the background here, I mean, the sand dunes and the creature, skeletons and stuff, it's all super cool. The creatures I'm fighting here early on, the scorpions, and I don't know what these flying winged creatures are, sort of like Minox, but sand Minox or something. I'm not sure what they're supposed to be, but it all looks really cool. I was joking on Instagram recently about these guys looking like the Green Goblin from the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. Now, obviously not at the time, but now I totally get that vibe from them. But yeah, these are actually womp rats, which I don't know. It's not what I envisioned when I thought about what a womp rat must look like, but that's what they are. So yeah, I'm cruising across the Dune Sea here. And taking out a bunch of Tatooine creatures along the way. It looks gross, I think. Pink, slimy creature there. But yeah, no lightsaber yet, so this is totally blaster fire, which is cool. As you can see, I've already gotten one upgrade, but we upgrade here as we go, the blaster, and that is key, I think, to being successful. You also saw in the menu there when I started the game up, when I fired it up, I'm totally going to be doing the game on easy because it's pretty tough. It's a tough game, although I've had more success playing it this time around for the Power of the 90s series than I ever have in the past, that's for sure. So pretty happy about that. These rocks in the background look a little bit like Han Solo faces, I think, like Han Solo and Carbonite, like the face turned sideways. I'm sure that's a coincidence. But yeah, first boss here is the Sarlacc Pit Monster, and I am just going to blast away at him. He's not too tough. You just have to look for the tell, so we see that tentacle pop up there, and that's kind of how we know what side of the screen he'll attack from. So we kind of use that to hopefully get through this boss fight successfully. As you can see, I'm taking some damage, but I'm not too worried about it because I'm reducing his health bar at a much quicker rate than he's reducing mine. So there we are. We're through the first level of Super Star Wars. All right, so these cinema scenes are really cool. It's kind of a combination of still images and then animated characters, but we've got like those layers there. So I like that. I think it's an interesting way of kind of telling the story of the movie. I'm actually planning on breaking those out, just taking those little cinematic scenes, breaking those out of the gameplay footage here, and creating the 16-bit version of A New Hope through the magic of editing. But yeah, we're now on the second level, which is Luke and his speeder with 3PO there, which is a nice touch. You can see 3PO riding shotgun. And way off in the distance, if you look over to the left off in the distance, you'll see the Sandcrawler, and that's my objective, is to get there, but I can't get to the Sandcrawler until I take out a certain number of Jawa, and we see that number being reduced every time I take out a Jawa, so 7 left to go, now 6. I think the Jawas are super fun in this game. They're tossing out little thermal detonators, but it's maybe not very nice, but it's super fun to blast them and hear them do their woo-dee-dee, and pop up off into Jawa heaven, I guess. I don't know. So it's pretty easy. This section's pretty easy, at least on the easy difficulty. You can see the moisture evaporators there too, so a lot of nice little touches. Usually I hate desert levels, but I think the color palette here in Super Star Wars and just the art direction makes it's pretty enjoyable to play through the desert. So it looks nice, and it's a lot of fun. All right, so now I'm outside of the Sandcrawler, and basically I'm going to take out a bunch of Jawas here, hopefully get some upgrades. This is the shield, so that gives me temporary invincibility, but hopefully get a bunch of blaster and health upgrades, and try to get through this section. It's a little bit of horizontal and vertical traversal I need to do here. I have to kind of climb vertically up this Sandcrawler while avoiding the enemies and the various sentinel guns or blasters, or like I don't know what you'd call them, the security blasters on the sides of the Sandcrawler here. So just kind of move back and forth and look for opportunities to get higher up, because ultimately I'm trying to get to the top of the Sandcrawler. It can be pretty frustrating there. I just slid off of one of these platforms and I didn't lose really any progress, but I've played this many times, this section in which I found myself being less successful, and it can be a bummer. Like if you can get pretty far up the Sandcrawler and then get hit by one of these blasters or flamethrowers on the side of this Sandcrawler, or just a pesky Jawa or something like that, and end up falling all the way back down to the beginning, which it can definitely be frustrating, for sure. So right there, that's an example where I almost was pushed off the side of that platform, and I think had I gotten knocked off there, it would have been okay, but it's easy to end up losing all of your progress and basically being back down at the ground level and having to climb all the way back up. But I think this is like, I'll probably be pretty repetitive in pointing this out, but I think the game does just a really great job of taking the look of Star Wars and translating that into like a colorful 16-bit, interpretation. So like this Sandcrawler, I think, looks great, especially like up close like this. It looks really cool, and it looks a lot like the Sandcrawler from A New Hope, but definitely has a lot of charm in that 16-bit interpretation of it too. And this game has all sorts of enemies and weapon types, and like the Sandcrawler obviously didn't have like 8 different blaster cannons on the top of it, but that makes a fun video game. So okay, now inside the Sandcrawler, things start getting a little tougher. This is where, like, a lot of times I'll pop this game into the Super Nintendo and sort of play, like for 20 minutes or something, and basically get to this to this level, at least maybe partway through this level, and then sort of start to get frustrated and just put the game away, because you get a little taste at least of 16-bit Star Wars. But tonight I am dedicated to getting further than that. So I keep upgrading my blaster. Before I had the Seeker, which is definitely very helpful, but now I have the Rapid Ion, which is it doesn't have the heat sinking function or whatever it is, but it's more powerful, so can take out jawas very quickly. I also think it's a nice touch how you get a little bit of that, would you forget it, I tried it, it's magnetically sealed thing going on here with blaster fire sort of bouncing all over the place. And I think that's definitely purposely reminiscent of the trash compactor scene. And I don't believe there is a trash compactor in Super Star Wars, so this is as close as we're going to get. I don't know that it's really worth it for me to try to grab that heart up there, but I'm one of these Mario players, like playing a Mario game where I see a power up or something, or I want to try to get every last coin, that sort of thing. So I won't be that exhaustive here in Super Star Wars, but that's my tendency when playing a game. So this section is pretty easy with a nice blaster upgrade like the Rapid Ion, but even something just like taking out these sort of blaster cannons on the moving arms can be pretty tough with a weaker weapon. But as you can see there, if you hit them in the right spot with the right blaster, they go down pretty quick. And those spikes down there, those turning auger spikes down there, they're not, it's not like an instant kill or anything, but they do take out quite a bit of health, so it's good to get through this section smoothly. Better to take a little bit of fire there than it is to fall on those spikes. Now here, let's be honest, I'm using Nintendo Power. Actually have this issue here at home, which is fun. Otherwise, I look up the scans online for something like this of Nintendo Power, because Nintendo Power's got always has the really helpful tips. So I was looking at a map of this level in Nintendo Power. It told me about that little secret. I don't think I knew about that before, so that's good, because I got some health upgrades and extra life, and my blaster is now powered up with plasma. So this part is frustrating for sure. By the way, how cute are the Gonk droids? Love it. 16-bit Gonk droids. But to slide past these laser, I don't know what you call them, the laser, sort of bars, laser cell or jail cell door, or whatever it is. Laser bars, I think that's a good name. To get past the laser bars can be pretty tricky and annoying. Like you just have to kind of, I just like sort of slide back and forth like that until I get through. So yeah, that's another advantage of playing on easy, because you can't really just abuse your health bar that way in more difficult modes. Now here, for whatever reason, if you fall on those spikes, I believe it's instant death, so I have to be very careful to avoid those. Again, this part super tough if you don't have the blaster power up, so luckily I have not died. If you do die, you lose all of your blaster power ups, and that is a really bad feeling, so luckily we've avoided that so far. And there are levels in which the blaster upgrades are less critical, and then there are some, like this one, I feel like, if you don't have your power-ups, you're in trouble. The Sandcrawler that we just finished, for instance, the outside of the Sandcrawler, that wouldn't be so bad. You just have jawas and some automated blasters on the side of the Sandcrawler, so that wouldn't be as bad. But here, there's instant death spots, and it's just more difficult. So like these guys right here, they take a lot of damage, and if you have a weak blaster, then you're looking at a lengthy encounter. Same goes for this enemy coming up here. Whatever that is really tough if you don't have the nice blaster upgrade. If you do, it's not a problem at all. Alright, here we get a bunch of power-ups, so most important thing is to get those. If you fall on the spikes a little bit like I just did, it's not a big deal, but you want to get those power-ups. Again, here you have to make sure you do this jump or this fall correctly, otherwise it's instant death. And we are on our way now to the... instant death there as well. So we are on our way to the boss here. If I can avoid falling into that apparently super treacherous sand. Okay, now it's the Lava Beast Juenko. Oh, I see, that's lava baloney. That makes more sense. But this boss, at least on the easy difficulty, is not super difficult. Especially, again, like it's so important to have the good blaster upgrades. But yeah, it's mostly, avoid that, let the blast right there of fire from the Lava Beast Juenko's mouth. And just avoid getting pushed into the lava. But yeah, this is fun for me. I love the fact that Super Star Wars is not too concerned with sticking like exactly super closely to the movie. So then you end up with a fun boss like the Lava Beast Juenko. I'm totally for that. So I found R2. 3PO will be happy we found R2, and we're through the Sandcrawler. At the time that I played this game in the 90s, I didn't finish it. I don't know how far I got, but I think I got at least this far. And, I'd seen the movies on VHS, at least a few times. Probably not necessarily a bunch of times, but at least a few times, and seen the movies on, like, the USA Network and stuff. But, to see this story retold in those cinematic scenes, in a video game, I think at the time was even cooler than it is now, just because, like, I hadn't had that many experiences with the Star Wars movies, so it was kind of like, oh yeah, I remember that, but or I know that scene, but I don't know it by heart like I do now. So it was cool. So this level, we are the Land of the Sand People. It's a cool. It sounds like the name of a children's book or something. So you can see my blaster upgrades are gone, which is not cool at all, but hopefully I'll be able to get some more decent ones here. And Nintendo Power is going to help me out with a pretty sweet tip that I will show you guys in just a second here. But yeah, there's plenty of enemies and plenty of falls into spiked pits and stuff that are kind of instant death. We got a boulder here, Indiana Jones style, so it's pretty treacherous, pretty difficult level for sure. But it's pretty fun too. So jawas working in tandem here with Tusken Raiders. So we'll see some of the titular Tusken Raiders here in just a second, I think. But I've already gotten a number of like blaster upgrades and health swords here. So on easy mode, it's pretty generous with that stuff. And again, that makes the game like definitely way more playable. I don't know if I'll be able to get... Oh, no, did I get the free life? I guess I did. Yeah, okay. So yeah, Womp Rats. There's a Tusken Raider. Womp Rats, Sand People, Jawas, Stalactites, or whatever. Lots of stuff to attack here. I think the animation of the Tusken Raider, sort of jumping with the gaffy stick there is super cool. And the sound effect, too. Still don't like that thing. So some of these platforms kind of slowly fall, and some of them don't. And some of the sort of platforming sections here are pretty tough, and some are not as bad. A lot of times the difficulty comes from having to make a series of jumps while being attacked by enemies, so we'll see some of that coming up. I really don't like that pink, beaked, lizard thing. It grosses me out. Not a fan. But one of the things about Star Wars supporting material in the 90s was that many of the creatures and worlds and things that were maybe referenced in the original trilogy or in supporting material for the original trilogy from late 70s, early 80s, a lot of that stuff wasn't really defined or maybe had not been visualized yet. So but I think it was a matter of hey, we're making a Star Wars video game, let's come up with some cool creatures, probably that sort of thing. But in the Power of the 90s podcast episodes, Ryan and I have been talking a bunch about how West End Games had been developing source material or kind of taking concepts from Star Wars, the original Star Wars movies and novels and things like that, and creating sort of creating those things, fleshing those things out visually. So here is where my Nintendo Power trick is. You have to give up a life to do this, but if you fall to the left at that particular area, there is this little hidden room in which you can get, I think, 7 extra lives just by sort of, pointing the blaster up and blasting away. So I'm going to do that probably a handful of times just to get my life count up nice and high, and that's going to be helpful as I get further into the game. So between playing on easy mode instead of Brave or Jedi, and exploiting this trick and maybe another trick or two, it makes the game a lot easier. Okay, so I didn't want you to have to see me doing that over and over and over, but I got myself up to 36 lives here. So hopefully that's going to help me get further into the game than I otherwise would, and maybe finish the game. We'll see. Okay, sorry about that. I accidentally blasted Obi-Wan, but we made it to Obi-Wan, and I think these portraits, even on NES, I think the artist doing these games had done a really good job of recreating the likeness of these characters in a 2D style. But here it looks really great. Same scene as before, but now we've got Obi-Wan watching this hologram as well. Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you are our only hope. And here's the line that most kids had probably been waiting to hear. Here is your lightsaber. It is the weapon of a Jedi Knight. So, in the next level, I will have the opportunity to use the lightsaber. But I'm going to call it here for now, and I'll be back soon with a second episode of Super Star Wars, and we'll see how far we can get here. Again, though, this is part of our Power of the 90s series, and you can find more Power of the 90s coverage for 1992 on our blog, blockaderunnerpodcast.com. Definitely subscribe on YouTube, subscribe on iTunes, or add us in whatever podcatcher app that you use, and follow us on Twitter at Blockade Run. But yeah, we're having a blast doing the Power of the 90s series, and I hope you'll check out the other content we're putting out. The 90s was an awesome time for Star Wars, and there's some really cool media, that came out at the time, in addition to Super Star Wars. So yeah, definitely check back here on YouTube for our follow-up Super Star Wars episodes, and check out the blog, blockaderunnerpodcast.com, for the rest of our Power of the 90s coverage.